Royal Guard SDORMS the corridor, after Charlotte screamed his name. The palace was enormous, filled with long corridors, high arched windows, and intricate tapestries that told stories of past kings and queens. She had worked there for several months, yet some days the place still felt like a labyrinth. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting golden patterns across the polished stone floor, and for a moment she allowed herself to admire the beauty of it. Her task today seemed simple, organizing a pile of documents that had been left in the corridor outside one of the smaller offices. The papers contained schedules, reports, and correspondence, some of which were marked urgent. Charlotte had a habit of wanting everything perfect, and she carefully stacked the papers in order, double-checking dates, names, and notes. She hummed softly to herself, a tiny comfort against the quiet stillness around her. The palace staff were few at this hour. Many had left for the day, and only a handful of guards patrolled the corridors. The quiet had its own charm, but sometimes it also made her feel uneasy. Charlotte often found that her imagination would run wild in these empty halls. Every shadow seemed to shift, every whisper of wind through the windows felt like a secret being carried along. She shook her head, trying to ignore the thoughts. "It's just the building," she muttered under her breath. "It's always like this." Just as she was placing a particularly important document on the correct shelf, she noticed a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye. At first, she thought it was a trick of the sunlight. The tall windows allowed the rays of the afternoon sun to dance across the walls, creating shadows that moved as though they were alive. But then the shadow moved again, more deliberately this time. Her heart skipped a beat. She turned slowly, trying to see who or what it might be, but the corridor appeared empty. Charlotte's pulse began to quicken. She had been trained in a way to stay calm in unusual situations, but this was different. The corridor was too quiet, too empty. There was no explanation for the sudden shadow. She swallowed hard and reminded herself to stay calm. "Probably just a guard passing by," she whispered to herself, though her voice sounded shakier than she intended. She continued her work, trying to focus on the documents in front of her. Each paper she touched felt heavier than usual. Each sound in the corridor seemed amplified. Her fingers trembled slightly, and she found herself glancing over her shoulder more often than necessary. Every step she took, every movement of the shadow outside the windows, felt like it was waiting for her to notice. Then she heard it, a soft footstep echoing from the far end of the corridor. It was deliberate, measured, but it wasn't the usual rhythm of a guard on duty. Charlotte froze. The footsteps were getting closer, and she realized they were coming toward her. A cold wave of fear ran through her body. She had been in the palace long enough to know that most strange noises had explanations, but something about this felt different. Her mind raced. She remembered the stories of past incidents in the palace, small security scares, intruders caught before they could do harm, and staff who had unknowingly alerted the guards just in time. Could this be one of those moments? She didn't want to think about it. She didn't want to believe that anything dangerous could happen in the place she considered safe. But the instinct to protect herself was stronger. Charlotte's eyes darted down the corridor. There was a small alcove near the windows where she could hide if needed, but she didn't want to run blindly. She had to act. Her mind went to Marcus, the royal guard she had met a few days ago. He had been kind, polite, and reassuring, a figure she could trust in a crisis. Without thinking twice, she screamed his name, hoping he would hear her. "Marcus!" she shouted, her voice echoing loudly through the corridor. It was not a calm call. It was filled with fear, urgency, and a hint of hope. She repeated it louder this time, her voice trembling. "Marcus, please!" The sound of her voice bouncing off the stone walls startled her. Her heart was racing so fast that she could feel it in her throat. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of sight, and peered toward the far end of the corridor. The footsteps stopped. Silence returned for a moment, heavy and tense. Charlotte held her breath, waiting, listening. The corridor seemed endless, stretching into darkness on one side and golden sunlight on the other. Then she heard it, a rapid series of clanging steps, boots striking the stone with purpose. Someone was coming, not wandering, not careless, coming with intent. Her relief surged as she recognized the rhythm of the steps, the same she had heard Marcus make during his brief patrols. Charlotte's fear slowly began to mix with hope. She had made the right choice in calling his name. If anyone could handle whatever threat or strange occurrence was approaching, it was Marcus. But even with that thought, she remained tense. The corridor was still a dangerous place when uncertainty was in the air. She clutched the documents to her chest as if they were a shield, though she knew they offered no real protection. Her mind began to replay everything she knew about security in the palace. Guards were trained to respond quickly, to protect staff, and to intercept anyone who posed a threat. Marcus had mentioned the drills he had gone through, the careful attention to detail, the ability to anticipate danger. Charlotte hoped he would act quickly, as she had no idea what, or who was really out there. As the footsteps grew louder, Charlotte noticed other small signs, the flicker of movement along the windows, the way shadows seemed to stretch longer as the sun moved across the sky. She realized she could hear her own breathing now, quick and uneven. She tried to steady it, reminding herself to stay calm, to stay alert, to stay ready. Finally, she saw him. Marcus appeared at the far end of the corridor, moving swiftly but carefully, eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. His armor gleamed in the sunlight, the polished metal reflecting the golden rays. He had a look of determination on his face, the kind that told her he would stop at nothing to ensure her safety. Charlotte's knees felt weak, but she straightened as much as she could. Relief and fear mixed together in her chest. She wanted to run toward him, but she stayed where she was, waiting for him to reach her first. The corridor felt alive with tension, each stone and shadow holding its breath along with her. In that moment, Charlotte realized something important. She had acted instinctively, relying on her courage even when fear gripped her. She had called out for help, and her voice had been heard. The palace, with all its history and grandeur, suddenly felt smaller, more personal, as if it were responding to her courage. The footsteps continued to echo, and Charlotte braced herself for whatever would come next. She didn't know if the shadow she had seen was a threat or just a trick of the light, but she knew one thing with certainty: Marcus would not let anything happen to her. The sound of his steps gave her a small measure of comfort, enough to steady her nerves, enough to make her ready for whatever awaited in the corridor ahead. Charlotte's eyes were fixed on the far end of the corridor as Marcus approached. Each step he took echoed loudly in the quiet stone hall, reverberating off the walls. The sound was steady, purposeful, and somehow reassuring. Charlotte pressed herself against the wall, clutching the documents tighter, as if they could protect her from the unknown. Her heart raced, not just from fear, but from relief. Help was on the way. Marcus moved swiftly but carefully, scanning every corner of the corridor. His trained eyes noticed things that Charlotte had missed. A small shadow slipping along the base of a tapestry, a faint scuff mark on the floor, a slight draft coming from a side door. Every detail was part of his calculation. He was trained for moments like this, moments when the unexpected could turn dangerous in a second. Charlotte couldn't help but notice the contrast between herself and Marcus. She felt vulnerable, unsure, and tense, while he exuded confidence and control. It was the kind of presence that could calm a room even in the most stressful circumstances. She realized she had trusted the right person, and that trust gave her a flicker of courage. She took a small step forward but stopped, waiting for him to reach her first. As he drew closer, Marcus called out in a calm but firm voice, "Charlotte, stay back and keep calm. Don't move too much. I need to see what's happening." His tone was both commanding and protective, the kind that immediately made her feel safer. She nodded silently, even though he couldn't see her, and pressed herself tighter against the wall. The corridor stretched ahead like a long tunnel of stone, with sunlight streaming through tall windows at irregular intervals. Dust motes floated lazily in the light, and the shadows seemed to shift slightly as the afternoon sun moved. To an ordinary person, it might have seemed peaceful. To Charlotte, it felt tense, almost alive, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the moment to reveal what lurked in the shadows. Marcus slowed as he reached the midpoint of the corridor. He crouched slightly, a reflexive movement that showed his readiness for any sudden action. He carefully examined the floor, noticing small marks that suggested someone had moved quickly through the hallway. He paused near a doorway, listening intently. The faintest sound, perhaps a creak from the door or a whisper of movement, made him shift his stance slightly. Charlotte watched silently, amazed at his skill. She had always thought of guards as protectors who followed routine, patrolling predictable paths. But Marcus moved with purpose, with awareness, with anticipation. He wasn't just reacting, he was reading the environment, predicting what could happen next. And somehow she felt that if anyone could protect her in this palace, it was him. The echo of footsteps returned, but this time they were lighter, almost hesitant. Marcus raised a hand for Charlotte to remain still. She obeyed instantly, barely daring to breathe. Her eyes followed his movements, noting how he positioned himself between her and the direction of the sound. His body language was firm, alert, and ready for anything. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the far end of the corridor. Marcus, eyes narrowed, assessing quickly. It was a man moving cautiously, perhaps unsure if he had been seen. Charlotte's heart jumped. Her mind raced with questions. Who was he? Was he dangerous? Had he meant to harm anyone, or was it an accident? She couldn't tell, but Marcus' stance told her that he perceived a real threat. Marcus spoke again, his voice low but commanding. "Stop where you are. Identify yourself." The figure froze instantly, raising his hands slightly in surrender. Marcus didn't relax. His eyes remained fixed on the man as he slowly approached, keeping his movements controlled and deliberate. Every step was calculated, minimizing risk to both Charlotte and himself. Charlotte could hardly believe what was happening. Just moments ago, she had been alone and scared. Now she was witnessing the skill of a trained guard handling a potential threat with precision and calm. She felt both awe and gratitude, knowing that her quick thinking, screaming for Marcus, had prevented a possible disaster. The man stammered, explaining that he had accidentally entered the corridor while searching for a storage room. His voice was nervous, almost apologetic. Marcus listened carefully, maintaining his cautious stance. He didn't fully trust the explanation yet, but his training guided him to assess the situation methodically. He signaled with a hand for backup, and in a few minutes, 2 additional guards appeared at either end of the corridor, blocking any exit. Charlotte's tension eased slightly, though her pulse remained high. She watched Marcus interact with the intruder, noting the calm authority in his voice and the careful, measured gestures he used to maintain control. The situation could have escalated quickly, but Marcus' presence and skill ensured it did not. He was not only a protector but also a mediator, keeping both the intruder and Charlotte safe until the situation could be fully resolved. Once the additional guards arrived, Marcus instructed the man to follow them to the security office for further questioning. The man complied, and the tension in the corridor began to fade. Marcus turned to Charlotte, offering a reassuring smile. "Are you okay?" he asked. His voice was gentle now, without the edge of alertness, but it carried concern that made Charlotte feel truly cared for. I think so," Charlotte replied, still trying to catch her breath. Thank you for coming so quickly." Her voice trembled slightly, a mix of lingering fear and relief. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of the moment without needing further explanation. Charlotte noticed how professional Marcus remained, even after the immediate threat had passed. He didn't let his guard down completely, maintaining awareness of the surroundings while guiding her safely down the corridor. Every movement was deliberate, ensuring she stayed out of harm's way until they reached a more secure area. As they walked, Marcus explained calmly what had happened and what precautions the palace had in place to prevent incidents like this. Charlotte listened intently, fascinated by the behind-the-scenes workings of palace security. She realized that every measure, every protocol, and every training exercise was designed to protect people like her, ordinary staff who were simply doing their jobs. The corridor that had seemed so threatening moments ago now felt safer under Marcus' guidance. Charlotte's fear began to transform into admiration. She had always known the guards were capable, but seeing Marcus in action, reacting quickly, assessing risk, and maintaining control, gave her a new appreciation for their dedication and skill. By the time they reached a secure hallway, Charlotte's heartbeat had slowed, though the adrenaline still lingered. Marcus made sure she was settled, instructing her to remain in a safe area while he reported the incident and ensured the intruder was properly handled. Charlotte nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude and trust that she hadn't expected to experience so intensely. She reflected on the events of the last few minutes. A simple scream for help, a corridor, and a shadow had brought her face to face with real danger and real protection. She realized how quickly situations could escalate and how important it was to act decisively and trust those who were trained to respond. Charlotte's thoughts drifted briefly to Marcus' courage. He had not hesitated, had not underestimated the situation, and had acted with both speed and care. That combination of bravery and caution was rare, and she felt lucky to have experienced it firsthand. She also realized that her own actions, screaming his name, had been part of the solution. Even in fear, she had contributed to ensuring safety. As she waited in the secure area, Charlotte looked around at the palace in a new light. The corridors, once intimidating and vast, now felt like spaces carefully protected, designed to safeguard everyone within. She thought about the balance between vulnerability and security, fear and courage, and how quickly the roles could shift in a place that seemed so serene but could harbor surprises. The afternoon sunlight continued to stream through the windows, casting long, golden beams across the polished floors. Charlotte took a deep breath, allowing herself to calm further. She realized that this experience would stay with her, not just as a memory of fear, but as a lesson in courage, trust, and the importance of quick thinking in moments of uncertainty. By the time Marcus returned to check on her, she felt more composed. The corridor behind him was quiet again, orderly, and under control. Charlotte stood tall, grateful for the presence of someone who could act decisively when it mattered most. She knew she would remember this day for a long time. The day when fear, action, and courage intersected in the palace corridor, creating a moment that tested and affirmed the strength of both human instinct and training. Marcus guided Charlotte carefully through the quieter corridors of the palace, keeping a steady pace while remaining alert to every sound. The echo of their footsteps bounced off the stone walls, a constant reminder of how large and empty the building could feel. Charlotte kept close behind him, her eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of light, and every corner. Even though the immediate threat had been contained, a part of her remained tense. The palace, grand as it was, held an air of unpredictability, and she had learned that moments of calm could change in an instant. Marcus motioned for Charlotte to pause near a wide window overlooking the palace gardens. The afternoon sunlight poured through, illuminating the intricate patterns on the stone floor. "Stay here for a moment," he said quietly, his voice calm but firm. "I need to make sure everything is secure before we move further." Charlotte nodded, understanding that his caution was part of his training. She leaned against the wall, grateful for the warm sunlight that contrasted the lingering tension inside her chest. As Marcus moved ahead, Charlotte noticed small details she had never paid attention to before. The tapestries lining the corridor told stories of battles, celebrations, and royal ceremonies. The polished floors reflected the sunlight in golden streaks, and the walls, lined with portraits of previous monarchs, seemed to watch silently over the hallways. It was easy to forget, in moments of routine, that this place held centuries of history. And now, it had also held a small but real moment of danger. From her vantage point near the window, Charlotte saw Marcus approach a side corridor and pause. He lowered his voice and spoke into a small communication device attached to his uniform. Charlotte couldn't hear the exact words, but the seriousness in his tone told her he was alerting other members of the security team. Every movement he made was precise, checking doors, peering into side rooms, and ensuring that every potential escape route was covered. He was not acting recklessly, he was acting with purpose. Charlotte's heart pounded again, not with fear this time, but with admiration. Marcus seemed to anticipate every possible move, every possible outcome. She realized that his training and experience gave him a confidence that ordinary people rarely possessed. Watching him, she felt a mixture of awe and gratitude. She had screamed his name in panic, and he had come, not just running, but thinking, analyzing, and protecting. Suddenly, Marcus stopped at the entrance to a small alcove. He crouched slightly, eyes scanning every shadow. Charlotte held her breath, wishing she could understand what he was seeing. After a moment, he motioned for her to follow him carefully. "Keep close and stay silent," he whispered. Charlotte nodded, moving as quietly as she could. Every step felt deliberate, as though even the softest sound could betray their presence. As they moved through the side corridor, Charlotte noticed a faint draft coming from a partially open door. Marcus paused again, listening intently. He gestured for Charlotte to step back, moving closer to the door himself. She watched tense as he slowly pushed it open, revealing an empty room bathed in afternoon light. Papers were scattered across the floor, but there was no sign of anyone inside. Marcus checked quickly, then stepped back. "It seems clear," he said softly, "but we need to remain cautious. There could still be someone nearby." Charlotte nodded, understanding the need for vigilance. Her earlier fear had evolved into a cautious awareness. She realized that danger was not always loud or obvious. It could be subtle, hidden in shadows, or even in the silence of an empty corridor. Marcus' presence gave her confidence, but it also reminded her that situations could change rapidly, and that being alert was just as important as being brave. They continued down the corridor, moving with careful coordination. Marcus' eyes flicked to every doorway, every window, every corner. He was aware of how large and complex the palace was, and he treated each step as a calculation. Charlotte followed, trying to mirror his caution while keeping her own nerves in check. She felt a mixture of fear, relief, and curiosity. This was not just an ordinary day at work. It was a lesson in trust, awareness, and the importance of quick action. As they approached a wider hall, Charlotte noticed a small group of staff members gathered near a doorway, speaking in hushed tones. Marcus nodded toward them and called softly, "Stay back." "I'll handle this." He approached the group, his presence commanding attention without raising alarm. Charlotte watched from a distance, noticing how people naturally followed his instructions. It was clear that his training and authority were respected, and that his calm but firm demeanor helped manage tense situations. Marcus quickly assessed the group, identifying who was present and what their immediate concerns were. He reassured them that there was no immediate danger and explained that they should remain in their current location until the situation was fully resolved. Charlotte listened, impressed by the way he managed both the staff's safety and the potential risk of the intruder. It was a balance she had never considered before, protecting people while handling the unknown threat simultaneously. After ensuring the staff were safe, Marcus signaled for Charlotte to follow him again. They moved toward a larger corridor that led to the main entrance of the palace. Along the way, Charlotte noticed that Marcus was still scanning constantly. Nothing escaped his attention. A loose carpet edge, a slightly tilted painting, even the faintest sound of footsteps from a distance. Every detail mattered, and every observation contributed to keeping everyone safe. Charlotte found herself thinking about the importance of training and preparation. Marcus' calmness under pressure was not just instinct. It was the result of years of practice, discipline, and experience. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act thoughtfully and decisively despite it. Her own fear had prompted her to call for help, and Marcus' training had ensured that help arrived effectively. Together, their actions had prevented what could have been a more serious situation. As they approached the main entrance corridor, Charlotte noticed the grand architecture of the palace in a new light. The high ceilings, intricate carvings, and polished floors that once seemed intimidating now felt protective, like the building itself had been designed to safeguard its occupants. She understood for the first time that the palace's history was not just in its walls and art, but in the people who maintained its security and cared for everyone within. Marcus stopped near a set of large doors leading to the central courtyard. He looked back at Charlotte, his expression softening slightly. "We're almost through. Just a few more steps, and you'll be safe in the courtyard where others can reach you easily," he said. Charlotte felt a wave of relief wash over her. The tension that had gripped her since seeing the shadow at the beginning of the afternoon began to ease, replaced by a growing sense of gratitude. Even as they reached the doors, Marcus remained vigilant. He pushed them open slowly, peering outside before stepping through. The courtyard was quiet, bathed in the warm glow of the late afternoon sun. Other guards were present, stationed strategically to cover all exits. Charlotte stepped outside, feeling the open air and sunlight as a calming contrast to the tense corridor behind her. Marcus finally relaxed slightly, though he remained alert. He guided Charlotte to a bench near the courtyard fountain, where she could sit and recover from the adrenaline of the past hour. She sank down, feeling her heartbeat gradually slow and her muscles loosen. The sound of water from the fountain and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze helped her feel grounded once more. Sitting there, Charlotte reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about how quickly the situation had escalated, how instinctive her own response had been, and how skillfully Marcus had handled the threat. She realized that even in moments of fear, careful observation, quick action, and trust in the right people could make all the difference. Marcus stood nearby, scanning the courtyard and keeping watch, but he allowed her the space to catch her breath. His presence was a silent reassurance. A reminder that she was not alone and that someone trained and capable was ensuring her safety. Charlotte felt a sense of calm she had not expected to find so soon, mixed with admiration for the dedication and courage of those who protected the palace every day. The afternoon sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Charlotte took a deep breath, savoring the feeling of safety and relief. She knew that the corridors behind her would never look the same again. They were no longer just empty stone halls. They were the scene of a moment where fear, quick thinking, and courage had intersected. She would remember the lessons learned that day for a long time. The tension in the corridor remained palpable as Marcus and Charlotte moved carefully, though now they had reached a point where action was inevitable. Marcus' instincts told him that the situation could escalate if handled incorrectly. He motioned for Charlotte to stay close behind him, her presence a reminder of why he needed to act decisively and calmly. Every step they took echoed off the polished stone walls, each sound amplified in the stillness of the palace. Charlotte gripped the documents tightly, not because they were useful as a shield, but because holding something tangible helped her steady her nerves. As they approached a wider hall, Marcus caught sight of movement at the far end. A figure, unsteady, cautious, and hesitant, appeared partially hidden behind a large tapestry. The person froze when they noticed Marcus, and for a moment the corridor seemed suspended in silence. Marcus' trained eyes assessed the situation quickly. He noticed subtle signs, the way the man shifted his weight, the faint rustle of clothing, and the nervous glance toward the windows. Each observation helped Marcus understand the threat without making assumptions. "Stop right there," Marcus commanded firmly. His voice carried authority, filling the corridor and preventing the figure from advancing. Charlotte, pressed against the wall, felt a mixture of fear and awe. She had seen Marcus in action before, but now the tension was sharper, more immediate. The figure's hesitation confirmed Marcus' suspicion that they were not entirely harmless, but also not fully prepared to act aggressively. Marcus took a cautious step forward, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening while maintaining control over the situation. Charlotte noticed how methodically he positioned himself between her and the figure, ensuring she remained safe. The intruder raised their hands slightly, a small gesture of surrender. Marcus' eyes never left the man as he continued to assess the scene. Every detail mattered: the position of the feet, the subtle tension in the shoulders, the direction of the gaze. Charlotte's pulse raced. Her mind ran through possibilities, each one more frightening than the last. She wondered if the intruder had ill intentions, if Marcus would need to intervene physically, or if the situation could be resolved peacefully. Watching Marcus, she realized that courage and skill were not about rushing forward blindly. They were about staying calm, analyzing the circumstances, and acting with precision. The intruder spoke, voice shaky but audible. I didn't mean any harm. I got lost while looking for a storage room," the person explained. Marcus listened intently, maintaining his position, his eyes never letting the figure relax too much. He needed to confirm the story without causing panic or allowing an escape. Marcus had been trained for moments like these, to read people, judge their intent, and act in a way that protected others while minimizing risk. Charlotte watched as Marcus subtly signaled to other guards positioned nearby. Within moments, 2 more guards appeared at strategic points in the corridor. They didn't rush. Their presence was controlled and professional, closing off exits without alarming the intruder. Charlotte felt a wave of relief. The situation, though tense, was now under careful control. The palace's security system was working as intended, and Marcus was at the center, orchestrating every movement. The intruder hesitated, glancing around nervously at the additional guards. Marcus took another measured step forward. "You need to come with us to the security office for questioning. Stay calm and follow instructions," he instructed. The voice was firm yet composed, a voice that demanded compliance without creating panic. Charlotte marveled at his ability to command respect and maintain control simultaneously. The intruder nodded slowly, hands still raised, and began moving cautiously toward the security office, guided by Marcus. Charlotte realized that the corridor, which had moments ago felt threatening and uncertain, was now a controlled environment. Every step Marcus took ensured that she remained safe and that the situation would not escalate further. As they escorted the intruder, Charlotte's thoughts returned to the initial scream she had made to call Marcus. It was incredible to realize how her simple, instinctive action had set the chain of events into motion. If she hadn't called his name, the intruder might have continued undetected, and the outcome could have been very different. Her fear, though intense, had led to a practical and effective action. Marcus maintained a vigilant watch over both the intruder and Charlotte as they moved through the corridor. He spoke occasionally, quietly instructing Charlotte to stay close and move carefully. His calm voice helped her regulate her breathing and manage the adrenaline that still surged through her. Every movement was precise, deliberate, and measured. The palace had never felt so alive with tension and purpose. The escort to the security office was brief but deliberate. Marcus maintained control of the corridor, keeping all other pathways monitored while ensuring that the intruder complied without incident. Charlotte noticed how the other guards coordinated seamlessly, positioning themselves naturally without any need for verbal orders. It was clear that training and experience had prepared them for this exact type of scenario. When they reached the security office, Marcus handed the intruder to the officers inside. They guided the person to a waiting room, ensuring that questions could be asked and verified calmly. Marcus remained outside the office for a moment, ensuring that Charlotte was not left alone in the corridor. Only when he was certain she was safe did he step back slightly, signaling that the immediate danger had passed. Charlotte exhaled deeply, a mixture of relief and lingering tension washing over her. She realized that the entire episode had lasted only a short time, yet it had felt much longer. Every moment was charged with anticipation, fear, and the need for careful action. The corridor, once an ordinary part of her daily routine, had transformed into a place where courage, quick thinking, and precise action had intersected. Marcus turned to her and offered a reassuring smile. "Are you all right?" he asked. His voice was gentle now, no longer filled with the urgency of potential danger but still attentive to her emotional state. Charlotte nodded, though her voice trembled slightly. I think so. Thank you for everything," she replied. She realized how much the presence of someone capable, calm, and prepared could affect her sense of safety. They walked together toward a quieter part of the palace, away from the central corridors and the scene of the confrontation. Charlotte reflected on what had just occurred. Fear had been intense, but it had led to decisive action. Marcus' skill and training had ensured that no one was harmed, and the intruder's intentions had been clarified without escalation. It was a rare combination of bravery, caution, and professionalism. Charlotte found herself thinking about the lessons she had learned. Courage was not simply acting without fear, it was responding thoughtfully and effectively despite fear. Trust was essential, and knowing that there were people trained to respond to emergencies allowed her to act when it mattered most. Her own instincts, screaming Marcus' name, had been part of the solution. She realized how small actions, taken at the right moment, could have a significant impact. The afternoon light had softened as they moved toward a secure area of the palace. Charlotte felt the tension begin to fade, replaced by a growing appreciation for the people who worked to maintain safety every day. Marcus remained alert, of course, but his calm presence allowed her to feel that she was now safe. The corridor behind them, once tense and threatening, seemed almost serene in comparison. Charlotte paused near a sunlit bench, allowing herself to rest. The sounds of the palace, the soft clinking of distant armor, the faint hum of conversation, and the trickle of water from the nearby fountain, helped her recover from the adrenaline rush. She realized that this experience would remain with her, not as a moment of fear alone, but as a moment of clarity, courage, and the importance of careful action. Marcus stayed nearby, ensuring that the area was secure and that no further complications arose. Charlotte looked at him, thinking about how quickly events had shifted from routine to crisis and back to calm. She understood in a deeper way the dedication required to protect others and how much trust and discipline mattered in moments of uncertainty. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, Charlotte felt a sense of gratitude and reflection. The confrontation had tested both her instincts and the training of those around her. Fear had been transformed into action, and danger had been managed with skill and precision. She realized that courage, trust, and careful observation were the real tools that ensured safety in a place as grand and complex as the palace. For the first time that day, Charlotte allowed herself to smile. The corridor, the intruder, and the tension all seemed distant now, replaced by a sense of relief and understanding. She had been part of a moment where quick thinking, bravery, and preparedness had come together successfully. And she knew that the lessons she had learned that day, about courage, awareness, and trust, would remain with her for years to come. The palace corridors had returned to their usual quiet rhythm, but Charlotte could still feel the echoes of what had happened reverberating through her mind. The tension and adrenaline that had gripped her moments ago had faded, replaced by a mixture of relief and awe. She had survived a frightening situation, and more than that, she had witnessed firsthand the calm courage and skill of someone trained to protect others. Marcus stood nearby, still alert but with a softer expression, allowing her a sense of security as she processed the events. Charlotte walked slowly to a bench near the central courtyard, the sun casting long shadows across the stone floors. She let herself sit down and take a deep, calming breath. The fountain's water trickled gently, a soothing contrast to the rapid heartbeat that had dominated her chest just an hour ago. She realized how quickly her day had changed. What had begun as an ordinary afternoon with routine tasks had turned into a lesson about fear, courage, and trust. She thought about the intruder, the man who had accidentally entered the corridor. The moment had been tense, no doubt about it, but Marcus had handled the situation with skill and patience, ensuring that no one was hurt. Charlotte reflected on how easily things could have gone wrong if either of them had acted hastily or without thought. She realized that in life, moments of crisis often revealed the best in people, their courage, their quick thinking, and their ability to act under pressure. Marcus walked over to her and gently asked, "Are you feeling all right now?" His voice carried a calm reassurance that made Charlotte feel grounded. She nodded slowly, grateful for his presence. "Yes, I think I am. Thank you for everything," she replied. She knew that the events of the afternoon had been intense, but his steady guidance had turned fear into safety, panic into careful action. She felt fortunate to have been in the hands of someone so capable. As she sat there, Charlotte began to replay the moments in her mind. The first shadow she had seen, the way her heart had raced, and the scream that had brought Marcus rushing to her side. All of it felt vivid and alive. She realized that her instinct to call for help had been crucial. Even though fear had made her hesitate for a moment, she had acted decisively when it mattered most. That action, combined with Marcus' skill, had prevented what could have been a much more serious situation. Charlotte's thoughts turned to the broader lessons she could take from the day. She had learned that courage was not about the absence of fear, but about taking the right action despite it. She had seen how preparation, training, and awareness could make all the difference. Marcus' composure under pressure had reminded her that confidence comes from knowledge, experience, and the ability to think clearly in stressful moments. These were lessons she would carry with her far beyond the palace walls. The afternoon sunlight began to shift as the day moved toward evening. The courtyard felt peaceful now, the tension that had filled the corridors earlier replaced by a gentle calm. Charlotte noticed how the palace staff were returning to their routines, the guards resuming their patrols, and the quiet hum of daily life settling once more over the grand building. Despite the recent scare, life continued, and the palace remained a place of order, history, and beauty. Marcus stayed nearby, keeping a discreet watch over the surroundings while allowing Charlotte to relax. She watched him move with the same careful attention he had shown during the confrontation, even though the immediate threat was gone. It was clear that for him, vigilance was not just a duty but a mindset. Charlotte felt a deep sense of respect for the men and women who worked tirelessly to ensure the safety of others, often in ways that went unnoticed until a crisis arose. As she continued to reflect, Charlotte realized how much the day had changed her perspective. She had always admired the palace from a distance, appreciating its history and beauty. But now, she understood the dedication and skill required to maintain the safety and order of such a vast and complex place. The corridors, once intimidating and quiet, now seemed like a testament to the discipline, courage, and teamwork of everyone who worked within them. She also thought about Marcus personally. The calm authority he displayed, the careful attention to detail, and the genuine concern for her safety had left a lasting impression. He had not acted out of ego or bravado, he had acted out of duty and skill. Charlotte realized that trust was built not just on words, but on consistent, reliable actions. Marcus, actions had shown her what true responsibility and courage looked like in practice. The sun began to dip lower, casting long, warm rays across the courtyard. Charlotte felt a sense of closure, a moment where she could finally let go of the lingering tension. She took a deep breath, allowing herself to fully relax for the first time since the afternoon's events began. The palace, with all its history and grandeur, now felt safer, not just because of the walls and security measures, but because of the people who protected it. Marcus finally approached her fully, his alertness easing as he acknowledged that the situation had been resolved. He smiled slightly, not in arrogance but in quiet reassurance. "You handled yourself well," he said. "It's not easy to stay calm in moments like that, but you did." Charlotte felt a warm sense of pride mixed with relief. Even in fear, she had taken action that mattered, and together they had ensured safety. Charlotte spent a few more minutes sitting in the courtyard, reflecting on the events and the lessons they held. She realized that life often presented unexpected challenges, but those challenges also offered opportunities for courage, quick thinking, and growth. She had learned to trust her instincts and the skill of others, understanding that collaboration and calm action could make a difference in even the most tense situations. Eventually, Charlotte stood, feeling more composed and ready to return to her daily tasks. She looked around the courtyard, noticing how peaceful and orderly everything seemed, as if the events of the afternoon had been a fleeting shadow over the palace's normal rhythm. The corridors, the guards, the sunlight on the stone floors, all of it had returned to calm. Yet Charlotte knew that beneath the surface, vigilance and skill remained, quietly ensuring that the palace remained a place of safety. As she walked back through the corridors with Marcus accompanying her for a short distance, Charlotte reflected on the value of courage and trust in everyday life. Fear was natural, but acting despite fear, calling for help when needed, and relying on those who were trained to respond could transform potentially dangerous situations into moments of learning and reassurance. She realized that small actions could have a significant impact, and that even ordinary moments could carry lessons in bravery and responsibility. By the time she reached her workspace, the palace was bathed in the soft glow of the evening sun. Charlotte felt a profound sense of gratitude, not only for her own safety, but for the dedication and professionalism of those who protected her. She knew that she would carry this experience with her, not as a memory of fear, but as a reminder of courage, trust, and the importance of quick, thoughtful action. Charlotte paused for a final moment, looking back down the corridor where the events had unfolded. The stone walls, the high arches, and the polished floors all seemed calm and serene once more. But she knew that beneath that calm, vigilance and readiness were always present, quietly ensuring that everyone within the palace remained safe. She felt a deep sense of respect for the people who maintained that security, and for the lessons she had learned about bravery, trust, and responsibility. With a final deep breath, Charlotte turned to her work, feeling a sense of closure and reflection. The palace had returned to its usual rhythm, the corridors once tense now peaceful, and the afternoon's events became a memory, a vivid, important lesson in courage, vigilance, and the quiet power of decisive action.